Do you want it adopted by common consent? Does anyone have anything to pull out?
I move to adopt the agenda as presented.
Is there any discussion about the agenda? Hearing none. All those in favor of adopting an agenda say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. That motion carries 4-0-0 in favor. Is there any public comment on closed session items? There is none. With that, the board will now adjourn to our closed session where we'll be discussing personnel evaluations and negotiations as permitted by the code. I lost the name of the code, but anyway, as permitted by the code. With that, we'll go ahead and adjourn to our meeting. Just negotiations, evaluations, and personnel according to the government code, and no action was taken. We also like to recognize that Ms. Dryden came in during that period of time, and so she is present. And with that, we'll do the official opening. If everyone please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Right hand over heart, ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. Next is minutes. Do I have a motion to adopt the minutes?
I just want to say I wasn't here last time, so just letting you guys know.
Okay. There a second? It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion about the minutes from last meeting? Hearing none. All those in favor of adopting the minutes as set forth, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Abstentions? 1. That's 4-0-1. Okay. Item number 7, the audience to address the Board of Trustees. Do we have any cards? No cards. Okay. Number 8, we'll move on to the superintendent's report. Turn this time over to Dr. Ramirez.
Well, good evening, board. My pleasure to be here, and any guests who may be listening. Start my superintendent's report by just sharing that we are very close to the end of the year, and it's an exciting time. A lot of activities, a lot of events, many things to close out the year, but also a pretty fast-paced environment. So we'll be at that point before we know it. So I do. Should we wait? Yeah, we can. So let me speak on a couple of things. So I'd like to actually maybe circle back to Mesa Moments and Mesa Events for just a quick moment. So if we could maybe go to the learning and engagement. So we are here in May. We're going to start with we are going to be taking the CASP, and so there's a lot that the parents will receive pertaining to that. This is a very abridged and snapshot version. We are scheduling CASP for the dates of the weeks of May 14th through the 31st. Just for the board's background and information, those grades assessed are grades 3 through 8. And it's in 3 parts, basically in 3 parts: English language arts, math, and science. Those are the three subject areas that are assessed by the state test. And in science, it's specific to grades 5 and 8. So if you see, as you see there, it's just a snapshot of the assessment schedule. We do our best to space it out, to provide kids with an opportunity to do their best and put their best foot forward. Where you see CAT, that's a computer adaptive test. That is, the platform adapts to students' present levels and will give them questions or problem sets that are consistent with that. And then wherever you see PT, that is a performance task. So that is that's where kids need to bring together different sources of information or different texts, and then create something in the ELA side. Similar in the math side. You have to unpack a problem that typically requires a lot more critical thinking and a lot more analysis and many more steps involved in that as well. And then we finish off with makeups. We try to keep those makeups going all along, and finally end with the science test in grades 5 and 8 in that last week of the 28th. So as always, there's two components to this. One is I'll speak to just the logistics of working the platform and knowing how to take this particular assessment. That is something that our teachers work on bit by bit over the course of the year, but certainly ramp up as they get closer to testing. And of course, by the time that students are in grades 7 and 8, they've now had a few years of exposure to the assessment. That's in some ways the easy part, because it just requires effort and time and exposure. Of course, the more challenging part is gauging what skills and competencies they're bringing to the exam. And that is an accumulation, not just of the school year, but over many years, right? So anyhow, just know that this is something that we certainly rally around, and more information will come forward to parents in the coming weeks, okay? Next item. We are also in the midst of an LCAP renewal. I won't speak to this too much because we have an LCAP presentation later in the agenda. But if you will, just take a look at the process by which we are looking to gather information and prepare, and that I'll be drafting a document. You see, I'll speak more about this during that presentation, but I'm looking to keep the goals intact, and I'll explain further a bit later in the agenda. We do have an educational partner advisory committee, and we're looking to bring that team together. That's typically a collection of parents and staff, but mostly parents. And we have some dates there tabled for that. Our Youth Truth Survey, which we'll be talking about in a moment, that is certainly a big factor into how services and goals are developed. And then lastly, our middle school student focus group, which Ms. Kuklinski has been working with now for several years. But it is a group that is always very, very helpful to providing us with information about students' experiences. And what I love about that group is, one, is that they're honest. They always are. But in addition to that, it's a real cross-section of our students. And, they all know each other. They're very earnest. They're very thoughtful. And just as I mentioned a couple of meetings ago, they actually presented a core of them presented to our staff. And I think that's was a good thing for our staff to hear and communicate with our middle schoolers. Okay, I want to jump into facilities because there's a lot to unpack there. So I'm going to try to be as precise as I can, okay? This is broken up into 3 parts, and I want to start with our district well replacement. So the board has been receiving updates on our plans to replace the existing well on property. So we now have driller specifications. They have been finalized. Those have been now provided to potential bidders. and to contractors. There is a platform by which that is disseminated, and many of them, we had already reached out and were securing interest. So they all have that in hand. I mentioned these important dates because today there was a mandatory pre-bid job walk. We had 9 contractors on site today, which is really exciting for us, really exciting. Our consultant, Jordan Keir from Keir Groundwater, had made these referrals, and I think most all of them were here on site for that walk. So that happened earlier this morning, very successful, very good. So what that effectively does is it ideally provides us with more options when it comes to those bids. The sealed bids will be received by the district on Tuesday, April 30th. There is a timestamp that needs to be satisfied. Those contractors have received all that information, and there's a period of time which they get to clarify some of their questions about the project, including today, of course. And then what I expect is that by the next regular meeting on Tuesday, May 21st, the board will be ratifying a decision. And let me speak on that for a quick moment. The goal here is to expedite this process as we are an emergency resolution. Any amount of time that we can buy back allows us to effectively communicate with the contractor and also start to set up the logistical schedule to take as much advantage of the final part of the school year for material procurement, orders, staging, to be ready to go on June 15th. So at that point, we will turn over the campus for that purpose. So there's a lot of work to be done between now and then. I can only say that BSA has been wonderful in providing us that support. Orlando de Leon has continued to be fantastic for us. Tammy has been involved every step of the way as well. And we're expecting the project to be concluded by the end of summer, by August 20th, I believe, is the date that we put out to the bidders. So with that, I want to pause and answer any clarifying questions about this, but you will continue to receive updates and you will continue to have an opportunity to weigh in on where things stand, including the ratification of the contractor or bidder or driller in this instance at the next meeting in May.
When's the first day back to school?
August 21st. First day back will be August 20th.
August 20th,
Mm-hmm.
the day you're supposed to finish.
Mm-hmm.
What, everything?
Yeah, it's an expedited process. Everything that I have been hearing from our consultant would suggest that it is a tight timetable, but it is a reasonable timetable, given the, as I've been told, the straightforward nature of this particular build. So we will aggressively, all kidding aside, the reality is the hardest part and the part that is the most important to complete is the actual drilling. They drill 24/7, and the noise level is what I want to prevent disrupting school operations once the school years get started.
Can you remind me, where is that drilling going to happen here on campus?
It will happen very proximal to the, that's a great question. It's very proximal to where the well, there's very specific criteria of where it can be located. So right now, if you know the campus, the existing Gaga Ball pit, right there.
Right there.
Correct.
Are you gonna put that pit back?
Many questions to be answered, Mrs. Romero. Many questions to be answered. We're taking it one step at a time. If it could have been avoided, it would have been avoided. But given the constraints, the reality, the regulations, it is the only place that makes sense in order to avoid any additional cost overruns beyond the cost of the project and what we already predict.
And what is it supposed to look like? I mean, once they're done, it's gonna be obviously covered, but is there gonna be anything extending out?
Yeah, I could start providing more of that information in the coming meetings. But in effect, it will look very much as our existing structure. And at the part of this contract will entail destroying the existing well. That is a regulatory requirement for us. Because of the permitting process, it requires that within a year's time maximum, that the existing well be destroyed. But from a physical feature standpoint, it will look very similar to what we have now. It's a very small platform, all things considered. I mean, for drilling 1,000 feet into the earth, it's actually a very small profile. But of course, the work to get there is very extensive and very specific to individuals who have that capacity or companies that have that capacity.
Be able to provide this data in top once you unstill their own.
Yes, I will communicate via the memo to give you all that background information as the weeks come along. So these are really milestone dates for us or for you as a board so that you can anticipate what that is.
And that water is gonna be used for outdoors, so how, is there already a system set up, so how we're gonna, that's gonna show how we are going to irrigate from that well to the landscaping? There is.
Yes, so we already have an existing irrigation infrastructure. And that's another reason why that particular location is so important, because our existing infrastructure, including the tank, the holding tank, is there. And bear in mind, the real necessity is, if irrigation isn't enough, is fire suppression. That tank holds the water that is used for fire suppression throughout the campus. Okay. All right. So all of this is good news. And again, we are working on a very fast track schedule here that I think will yield a major project for us and for the district for decades to come, assuming that everything goes according to plan.
I think the one question I have, I know that we have all that infrastructure already in place. We've got the tank that's been there. We've got the irrigation that's been there. That's, to me, is a non-issue, except for it's been dormant for a number of years. And can we help mitigate that? Is there water in the tank to try and verify that the irrigation plumbing is functional and doesn't need attention? And I don't want to wait until we get to the project, the well being dug, and say, oops, now we've got the irrigation's got all these things. I'd much rather deal with that ahead of time before we begin drilling as best as possible. It can happen concurrently. But do you understand what I'm saying?
I do, and I now have enough information to be able to answer your question. It's going to have to be an order of operations, because the major infrastructure is the well and the infrastructure that exists in that proximity, including the tank, including the irrigation system, the irrigation pump, the fire pump, all of that is connected, right? All of that will be reconnected and redistributed based on the new location of the well. Once we start talking about all of these irrigation lines that feed all throughout 17 acres, there will be, no doubt about it, there will be cracks in the lines, there will be sprinkler heads that don't work. We've experienced this already before because the system has been dormant. The reason that we can't try that out right now is because we have a very finite amount of water in that tank. And right now, its primary purpose has to be for fire suppression. Along these lines, today, had a conversation with Del Norte Water, because we will need water to be able to carry out this project. So I'm trying to arrange and enter into an agreement with Del Norte Water so that we can draw domestic water. Okay, so there are a number of different important actions that we need to take just to make this project go. Yeah, so I completely hear what you're saying. I think the infrastructure there is mostly intact because of the kind of work that we put into it before it became inactive again. So I'm really expecting all that to be able to be salvaged. And that's major infrastructure, things like the irrigation pump, the timer, things of that nature, right? So anyway, fascinating stuff. But all in all, really, really great, bold action being taken. And we expect that this project will be completed on or around the start of the new school year.
So the 9 teams that came and walked today, was anybody indicated they couldn't start in enough time?
They have not indicated that at all yet. That's probably going to come over the next couple of weeks. And then ultimately, the biggest question will be how many bids are submitted? And then where does that bid number land, right? Because we will be looking to take the lowest bid.
Well, I think that's why some tree, an outlining for priority update. That way we can up
Yes, we'll be setting all that up in advance so that the board it feels informed, and certainly we can carry on with some individual conversations, points of clarifications so that we can feel confident about that decision.
Well,
Okay.
If I
Yes,
can,
sir.
to that end, what trustee Dryden was just saying, we should be looking for that because we're looking to ratify on May 21st. We need to do our due diligence and make sure that we're reading on those things.
And just I want to just reiterate to you, we are also in very, very trusted hands. I understand, you know, exactly what the board is requesting. But you know, we hired a consultant for that very reason, somebody who is very well versed in this particular area. And so I just wanted to reassure you that Jordan Keir himself was here for the job walk, and that we'll be continuing to make that a priority in terms of eliciting his input. Okay.
Okay.
So with that said, I actually want to go back to the beginning of the presentation. And if we can, I'd like to start with our Mesa moments. And then I'd like to have Mrs. Spillane maybe introduce her kiddos because she knows a whole lot more about their work and can speak to it, but we'll do this in earnest. So I was going to wait until May to have a Mesa moment recognition. We had one in March, but the timing of it was just too perfect. Just over the last several weeks, Mrs. Spillane, right prior to the break, was immersed completely in our own Mesa Science Fair. And that was weeks and weeks of preparation, of hard work, dedication. And that's the visible part of it. What I want to highlight also is just who she is as a person and as an educator, period. To students, to the staff, her contributions, going all the way back to the overnight trips, making a room available, helping students this year, spearheading AVID implementation, implementing a new science curriculum in 7th and 8th grade. The list goes on and on of superlatives that I think really highlight what a real valuable person she is and valuable teacher she is to our students, to our families, and obviously as a model and a role model to our staff as well. So with that, I just, on her own merit, I wanted to present her with a plaque that speaks to that. And it says, just thank you for your service and dedication to Mesa Union School District, April 2024. So Mrs. Spillane, if you can come up. And And on that note, so if you can just pause right there, Mrs. Spillane. On that note, we have some guests here, families, students. And I want to really highlight Alexa, Layla, and Gloria. But I'm not going to speak on them because I'm not going to do their contributions justice. But I am going to turn it over to Mrs. Spillane, who hopefully can give us just some of the reasons we've asked them to be here and their families to highlight their contributions.
Okay, sure. Let's see, start here. So it's Alexa and Marla. Alexa and Marla, elected to participate in science for this year. It's a mandatory requirement for 8th graders, but not for 7th graders, and they like took it on. They did it on their own time, and you want to talk about something?
So we test, or our project is called like reducing biofuels, so we tested like 3 different plant materials to see like which could possibly produce the most biofuel, which possibly in the future could be like an alternative for fossil fuels, that are used in like cars or like heat or like many other things. And so we were just trying to find like the best use for like material, which ended up being grass out.
And at the county fair, they also participated in they also got a special award from Cal Energy, and they got $500. And it was a special recognition for a project like looking into the future, like how could we make big changes. So the Cal Energy representative was very taken with their project and said, in fact, we really appreciate it. And this is Gloria. Gloria is an 8th grader, and she played first in her category in chemistry. And Gloria did a project. She did the same project last year, but it didn't go the way she wanted it, and so she did it again. And her judge at her school fair was she's an Amgen scientist. She was just blown away with Gloria because she took her project and she made it better, and her results were closer to what she was looking for this year. So just having that perseverance to work through the problems that she had last year and dedicated to it. Very passionate about it. Long over summer, she was like, she really wants to get on this project. She's already thinking about it. So why don't you tell us about it? And so Gloria was chosen to advance to the California State Science Fair. And that is given to the highest points earner at the county fair. And that was just today. So she was on a Zoom call for 2 hours. She had 7 interviews, and she did it in my back room in my classroom. You want to tell them how your state science you make that little. It's required in upper classes. So at the county fair, I ran into that were I think that was fun. But yeah, we had a great representation, and it did really well. I think a lot of it are really skilled are things to not file. That is always very complimentary.
I have a question. I know I've been part of the NASIC community for about 6 years.
And I've only known of Science Fair being this successful just recently. Just, I don't know if it's because I've only been a board member for the past 2 years, or has it always been successful? Can you tell us? Since I've been here, I'm going on 10 years. And I would say it's been, I've always made county fair an option. We've always had a mix of science fair. It's always, I've been here since 7th grade. I'm just recently in the last couple of years changed it to 8th grade so that, it's more of a demonstration of what I've learned of homemaking. I kind of like it better that way because I have 2 years of that, 7 years. So I like it better. I want to say like the success this year was a lot of the 7th graders participating in volunteering for last year. And they're excited by it and they're ready to come back. I think I doubled the number of kids that came over last year. So maybe it's just the culture that is being created. It's great. Yeah, I love it. The first time I remember coming there was at the state fairground. And so there's something really from that. So I don't know, I suppose it's
Where does county meet now?
last year. County.
Okay.
Couple years for that was like how they're looking to find a bigger venue, so they can offer more at the fair. So.
Okay.
Well, I think you did a fantastic job at both the middle school tier level, the county level. I think I was very impressed. I wasn't sure what to expect, and I was very pleased with everything that you did.
I have a couple of questions for your participants here. I am putting you on the spot, so I apologize for that. We understand that you did phenomenal projects and you did certain things and you did a scientific research, but what were the things that you weren't expecting that you came away with from the science fair project? Not related to the science project, it's not related to the science that you did and presented, but what were the takeaways from the project?
I know I like to say because I don't want to miss anything, and then I get from. Yeah, I think that was pretty fun. So also I made things to show clear up the drivers yet, and I was able to give them practice.
Well,
Well, Gloria, so this is what find something, you say, that thing might work out how I thought. What if I change it? How does that affect it? And that's how science, that's why people research for years and like their lifetime. Because they're trying to make it better every time. They're trying to take what they learn and pivot and change it and do something different. That's why you try more than one thing. If you only try that, how would you know how it compares to other biologists, right? So the whole thing of science is learning and then sitting on the machine like, what can I do with it? Can I make the world better? That's it. Right? Maybe I can make it so make protein that lasts all day so that if you don't have to do this, and then what you do, the less research, the less like environmental implications and waste. Like there's so many ways. Very things with this little project and on.
So just to thank you, thank you all the parents that put in the time, the effort, the commitment, to make sure that we're
show their best to our students who tonight, many more to represent us pretty well in the county. But I'll just keep the full fact that this is something that we just do. That's a function of who we are. I think it's the most important. What I personally feel more about is just the opportunity to explore, the opportunity to be able to work with individuals in the field that are able to then help them explore just areas of study or even get to know more about themselves. And that becomes a huge step. So I want to thank you all for your contributions and your effort. And parents, thank you so much for being here, not just tonight, but every day for your kiddos and for supporting them.
And I just want to mention that opening ceremony that you had was fantastic. It was amazing. It was amazing. I'm so glad that it happened here. And hopefully it's, the repeatedness of it, even if it's the same thing. I know. And can I? So, Mr. Di Maria had his seventh grade right, and the kids had questions and input. I mean, people got like 60 some letters. They wrote responses to all the letters and sent like a 12-page document of responses. And they're so blown away that they sent them thinking of that they do want to come back. He's like, give us a call next year. We'll see what project we're working on. What we're bringing.
I
So,
thought they were quick.
yeah, we're super excited to have them. And that was through a connection with.
Thank you so much. I'm going to take a brief moment.
Here. And 1, 2, 3. Two.
Now, I know these students have nothing to do tomorrow. They're welcome to stay because there's no homework tonight, right? On this exciting time. Right.
Thank you so much for all you did, because it wasn't just about the project, anything that intro or inspired to do something that was outside of the beach. And we've always, that's the beauty of Mesa, we've got some world here. This is what forecast.
Right.
And we've always had special people who have inspired us or think and to excel. And so, from the bottom of my heart, okay, just having that inspiration, stretch yourself and to achieve success relate. And that's what I believe we should do. And thank you for providing an environment that creates that. Thank you.
Thank you.
So just to recap, the board received this in the memo, but I just wanted to highlight a few pictures. And can you go one slide back? Recognitions, and I do highlight recognitions, and they're nice, and we should be very, very proud of them. But again, I say the fact that all of our kids, in 8th grade are contributing, are participating. That day was phenomenal, just having them here, having them be nervous and work through it. And then to see some of them go to county, timid, a little shy, maybe feeling a little out of place, and then be recognized. And there's two specific names that I'm thinking about right now. And one of them is pictured here. It's just amazing. It really is. And again, it's the hard work of everybody, but it's really that's what we're here to do, right? It's rally around kids and give them that opportunity. And I just wanted to highlight that because I couldn't be more proud. And I try to find ways to say yes to Mrs. Spillane, because I believe that science is one of, if not the crown jewel for us. And science instruction in general in our middle school is a phenomenal thing. So I'm very proud. I think the results speak for themselves. We will continue to build, and we will continue to just get better and better and establish that culture as something that we just do here at Mesa, right? We've done it before. We're doing it now. We will do it in the future. So with that said, I want to transition us, it's jumping around here. I want to transition us just to two more topics on the facilities front that I think are important for the board to be aware of. Our facilities plan, this is something that emerged some time ago here from the board. As you can see there, we put out a request for proposal on specifically a master plan that would address the district-wide systems, including mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and fire protection. All of the most operational yet critical parts of our physical plant and what we do. And we did receive a very comprehensive proposal from PBS engineers. We did hold an interview with them on Thursday, April 11th. We are still weighing the possibility of moving forward with that proposal. They do have a lot of local contacts and a great deal of range to their services and their ability to put forward a quality report. And by the way, we've been talking about this in the context of Measure O, but it's really more than that. It's really about understanding where our priorities are and the things that maybe we don't see that aren't visible, but that do require time and attention. I won't go into detail. I will share the report and the presentation that came to us. And we will have more for you here in the coming meeting or two. But we still need to debrief and talk through whether that's a good step, but I believe it's a good step in order to really provide a foundation objectively for where things stand, as a campus and as a district. So more to come on that. Last item, our VoIP work, I confirmed, will begin tomorrow, and it will start to be phased in with an effort toward capitalizing on the end of the year to be able to work out our systems and make sure that we start this transition on a complete phone replacement. I can go on and on about this, but just there's a lot of work that's already been undertaken. The sets are already been programmed and will start to be installed as of tomorrow. So that's wonderful news. Lastly, we're going to just look at attendance. Our attendance figures have been pretty stable over the course of the year, hovering between the mid 94% up into the 95, which is where we were this past month of March. We're looking to end the year as strong as possible. And our goal is to remain at or above 95. I haven't done the calculation on where we are, but we are very close to that figure. And we're, again, attendance is self-explanatory, but we continue to educate, we continue to inform, we continue to work with our families in service of our students. And just to wrap up, we will just a few upcoming events. We have our open house is coming up next week. We have Earth Day, which I've updated, and Mrs. Dryden is very much a part of that collaborative. CAS testing, and this is like a minuscule part of all the activities that we have going on. More information will come by way of the memo, but if you can please mark, for those of you who can attend, the trustees who can attend, 8th grade promotion on June 14th, 4 p.m. Some of you will be there. At least one of you will be there for sure. And so I think it's going to be a very special time. Every one of these has been for me. And we're just trying to continue that long tradition of bidding farewell, but sending off our kids to the next stage of their life and their families along with them in the best way possible. So with that, I'll conclude my superintendent's report.
That there's material that's going to be given to families. What kind of material is that? I thought you mentioned.
Sorry, not material, but just notifications about what that schedule will entail. Some of it will come by way of teachers, right? Depending on the grade level, just to be able to provide a good context where kids feel they can put their best foot forward. But most of the background work is happening now in preparation, bit by bit, depending on the grade level, around exposure to the platform. And a lot of this work has really been spaced out over the course of the entire school year in terms of just navigating the platform. But we're doing a lot of work on the back end just to make sure that any accommodations are there, that everything is operational.
I had a couple of questions with regards to the CASP, and that was, it has to do with the preparation. One of these you saying that CAT is an electronic piece, and do we have something in place that they can be given that's similar to that, and so the students are becoming aware of what that might feel like and not have to wait until the day of the test to feel that?
Yes, that's what they're doing now. They're just taking small steps to just expose them to what the features are, how to use some of the tools that are embedded into the software. So that's really what the weeks leading up to the CASP entail. And there's always this fine balance of exposing and not overwhelming or doing it to the point of saturation. We've, coming off of the break, we really hit the ground running, and everybody settled in very nicely. And just to resume learning and resume just activities as they were before the break. So very, very happy for that. But the platform features, that's something that teachers, depending on grade level, they've all been working on it over the course of the year, but then they start to introduce it more fully the closer we get to the testing.
The other question I had with regards to CASP is making sure that how do we engage the students to say, be sure and put your best foot forward so that you're not just blowing off the test, as it were. It's like, I'm out of here, what's it really matter? And say, we need valid data to do this, and we need you to represent yourself well and be a part of Mason, set forth a legacy to follow, that type of thing.
Yeah, I can tell you, I don't, it's not been my experience here at Mesa that's been the case. I think our kids do put their best foot forward. I really do. In as much as it's a reflection of learning, that's what I personally and professionally care about. And to what extent we can use it to understand how we need to do better. I think that's been the constant theme. As I mentioned, it's a fine balance between promoting the idea of giving it its due without overwhelming and feeding into the narrative about it being the highest stake test ever, because I don't believe that that's the case. That said, I will reiterate again, my experience here at Mesa has been that our kids really do care. They do their best. And then the results are as they will be, and we will review, we will reassess as we always do. And so I'm not concerned about that here at Mesa at all. I don't think we have that kind of culture. I think our kids are encouraged and they do their very best.
All right, thank you. Any other comments or questions?
I was just gonna give one more shout out to our science department, really, to Mrs. Blaine specifically, but I think, and it's not CASP tested related, but it is, like when teachers put their passion and hearts into these programs, it inspires the kids. That's why even though science fair is only required in 8th grade, we had 6th and 7th graders in this program. And then when they're in 8th grade and it's required, they have already now practiced it a couple of times, understood the process, and then do very well because it's not the first time out of the gate, you know, they've kind of built up to this. So I think it's the same thing with CAPS testing is, you know, it's not the first time. They get practice tests and they've been here for years, so they understand. But when the adults in this environment and the community share their passion, the kids pick up on it. And I think that's exactly what we're seeing with science fair.
Thank you for that. Okay, moving forward, board members' reports and communications. Correspondence. We received from VCOE. They reviewed the disclosure of our collective bargaining agreements for the Mesa Union Teachers Association. Bargaining units stated March 1, 2024, and found that we're capable of managing that and approve of that. Is there any other correspondence, reports, or interests and concerns?
I will just repeat Dr. Ramirez's Earth Day is next week. And so the campus has activities that they'll be doing every day of the week to celebrate Earth Day. And specifically, they're going to end the week with having like a no plastic waste day at the cafeteria, which is a really big accomplishment, I think. And it's something that they got inspired from because other schools had started this program. The teachers here found out about it and said, "Ooh, this looks like something fun to try." And, you know, they reached out to me as well. And I said, "Yeah, I'm in. How can I help?" And so I just think it shows that when we have community engagement and involvement, like, look at the things we can do.
Thank you. Anyone else? Hearing nothing, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Does anyone have anything that they need to pull out for the consent agenda, or do we want to do a motion on that? Okay. Are you going to make?
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second the motion.
Any discussion? Does anybody want to talk about any of these items? Hearing none. All those who are in favor of excuse me, of adopting the consent agenda as it's been presented, say aye.
Right.
Any opposed, say nay. The motion carries 5-0 in favor. Item for discussion, the LCAP board presentation. Dr. Ramirez.
Thank you again, Mr. Sullivan, board. So I'm going to try to just move us briskly along in terms of this accountability presentation or LCAP plan. That picture there, you would have seen it already, but that was from the science fair, Ventura County Science Fair. Unfortunately, a lot of our students, our 8th graders, couldn't attend because they were in Washington, D.C., but that's a good thing. It's all good things. And I just wanted to represent that because it's just, again, a highlight for us, and something to be very proud of. Moving forward, I wanted to speak to a couple of just big picture items, just procedural, of what the local control funding formula entails. Years ago, under a prior governor, California shifted the way in which schools are funded. And that is something that has now been settled. We've got some changes there, but in effect, it gave us an accountability around a local plan, a district plan that put forward big goals for that community. We are tasked with using multiple measures to ensure that we are monitoring the academic, the social, and emotional well-being of our students. We want to be mindful of equitable outcomes for kids, recognizing that many students that all of our students have a different starting point in life. And that what we want to see is accelerate growth. We want to see that growth develop and be at a steady pace. And we want to make sure that we're addressing local needs, right? Our kids here at Mesa, uniquely different. Next item. This just gives you background. We are actually concluding a 3-year plan, and we are springboarding into the start of a new 3-year plan. We now have the dashboard, the California School Dashboard, fully as a part of our system. And the state, to their credit, has been doing a lot to try to create partnerships locally, but also across regions. And that they've established a few other entities to be able to connect county offices and have county offices connect districts to be able to work as a community, as a broader community, rather than in isolation. Now, these are all the components of the LCAP. So the LCAP, it is an unwieldy document. So I will spare you the 100 pages worth of writing and metrics and budgetary lines that are there. You will have an opportunity to review that more fully in June. However, what you see here are the basic components, from the budget overview for parents to the plan summary, all the way out to the action tables, right? And part of it also is a look back at this year. And that's what we'll be doing here this evening and over the next 3 meetings. These are simply the priorities and the more important guideposts that will that serve as a foundation for the LCAP. So you see priority is everything from priority 1, which is basic services, credentialed teachers, facilities, all the way out to pupil achievement, right? These important metrics. Next slide, please. I want to just spend a quick moment on this. 2023, 2024, I really want to stress this point. Goals and actions don't just materialize and then either lead to success or failure. It's not binary. It's not that simple. There are a number of actions which we won't discuss tonight, but a number of actions that I can make an argument, that we can make an argument, I have a different slide on this, are very recent. So I would like for the board to consider a different way of thinking about this. Our decisions boil down to adopting, in other words, continuing, adapting, which is modifying and changing in some way an existing goal, or to abandon. Now, we know that if something is just not yielding results, it's worthy of abandoning, especially if we're going to help provide resources for other activities or other programs. But how we get there, next slide, please, is by just understanding that there are different stages of implementation. And what I mean by that is that we are coming off of a pandemic that was very disruptive to staff, to students, to communities. And the effects of that, while everything appears to be very normal, and it is, the lingering effects of that are very real. And we're still experiencing them. We're still seeing them through our students in particular. So how we move about, I would love to tell you that we can just click at a pace that we all want to be at. But sometimes the results lag. Sometimes the results don't arrive in a timely fashion, the way we wish they would. So in this instance, I want to propose that there are various stages of implementation. There's exploration and planning, which is just a foundational stage where you're just starting to build something up. Where we are in most instances is in implementation, where we are scaling up, growing, and where we want to sustain, especially in an environment where our resources might contract, where we may not have as many dollars as we did in prior years. We want to make sure that we're being very, very thoughtful about what we continue to support, because some of these new ventures have led to great, great success, at least anecdotally. Now the question is, can we see that reflected in the numbers? So one of the on the side, I just added some commentary that the core goals in MESA's LCAP will remain into the new 3-year plan, but because there's an interest in continuity and growth, and that doesn't happen overnight. Also because there are actions that are at different stages of implementation, and that the decisions will be based upon results, impact, and available resources. So I'll highlight one important change that happened from last year to this. Just a year ago, we hired a school counselor, somebody with a pupil personnel services credential, something that, to my knowledge, was the first time that MESA had that position. Well, not only were we very fortunate to be able to fund that position, but it's being occupied by somebody who has already stepped in and been a very good fit for our community, with a great spirit, collaboration, and great interpersonal skills. Over the course of the year, she has developed from the ground up a counseling program, but it is too soon to see it all the way through. That will continue into next year. So that's just one small example. Well, in this instance, it's an important one of how we develop a program. And it's not overnight. It's through a lot of very strategic and focused effort. So, those results are starting to bear fruit, but it is something that I wanted to highlight. So as we look at this, I wanted to, tonight we'll be looking at the Youth Truth Survey specifically. Let's go ahead and fast forward to the goals. Here are the goals. You've seen them before, 4 goals. Those will most likely remain into the new LCAP. What will change are the actions. Those are the ones we will modify and start to adjust. Go ahead, next slide. So part of our needs assessment is looking at data. And an important piece of data for us is the Youth Truth Survey. It's been going on for a number of years. You'll see the data in a minute. Moving to the next slide. Here's a demographic snapshot. Now, I've showed you this slide before, but one that I want to highlight is our socioeconomically disadvantaged percentage. Just looking at it from last year to this, that number increased from about 30% last year to about 36% this year. So we are seeing that there is more need amongst our students and families. And I just want to bring that up because even year to year, we see these changes that I think for us are very important and meaningful. This is just a representation of our school dashboard based on 2022, 2023 information. And so to the heart of tonight's presentation, the Youth Truth Survey, what our Youth Truth Survey now brings is a climate survey that talks to us about families from grades 3 through 8. Broken up into 2 groups, 3 through 5 and 6 through 8. In prior years, prior to last year, it was really 5 through 8, but then now that's been rearranged. And so you'll see the data in just a moment. So let's start with who participated. We have the breakdown there of students, staff, parents, guardians, family members, and a breakdown of the students by grade level. So in this middle school 2-year comparison, you see the shifts up or down from the prior year. Now, one of the things that I want to just address when I've given this presentation in years past, it's typically been after an opportunity to unpack this with the staff. In this instance, that report came later. And so you're seeing it, the board is seeing it really almost in real time. Those reports just came through right over the break. And so we've not had an opportunity in full to be able to make sense of these with our staff and dig into the layers that the reports provide. But in this instance, you'll see wherever there is a positive change forward, taking a look at the student column, our engagement and our relationships have increased. Again, perceptions among students, grades 6 through 8. Our academic challenge has taken a bit of a step back, and our sense of belonging is more or less in that same range where it was before. Turning over to family, you see some changes there. Engagement dropped by 6. Our culture increased. Communication and feedback in relation to other prior years continues to stay strong. School safety has been an ongoing concern, and you'll see it reflected in the multi-year in a moment. And then the part that I'll just give you a little bit of background on is in the resources. I was very clued into that number increasing because I think that's a representation that our parents, families, and parents and families specifically are recognizing that some of the things that we are putting in place, that they are in place. I think that's a good acknowledgement. So, we've not had a full opportunity with the staff to dig into the data yet, but this is just a snapshot view. And then on the staff side, you see engagement. Took a step back. Relationships continue to hold strong, and culture as well. School safety, top of mind, and professional development and support, top of mind for staff. Going into the family view, specifically, you'll see the box up above is the 2024 data, and you'll see historically where we've been. So in terms of communication and feedback, we've been able to maintain over the last several years. I credit that to a number of different ways in which we communicate with our families and continue to keep them informed. Culture remains very strong. And if you look, to prior years, as far back as 2017, you see, a good, solid move forward. Relationships continue to be very strong. Engagement, relatively strong comparison. But of course, school safety continues to be top of mind, especially from that peak of 2021 coming off of the pandemic. Next slide, please. Among staff, you see what historically has been engagement, taking a step back as I described before, yet still relationships continue to be very strong. Culture remains pretty solid, and certainly professional learning continues to be an area of further growth and exploration with our staff, as is school safety. Transitioning to student voices specifically, you see there the same categories, and it's some of the same questions that are asked in to different audiences. So engagement, academic challenge continues to be, one of the stronger areas of with a more affirming response rate. Culture is definitely an area that we have historically and over the last years that I've been a part of the district, been very much focused on. Peer belonging, collaboration, and relationships. Now, one thing that I wanted to highlight in a moment, once we take a quick look at these by grade level, you'll see that in 6th grade, the responses by and large are a lot stronger. Whereas by eighth grade, those responses tend to wane. And now this is not new for us. It is a trend line that unfortunately has been over the course of several years when we look at it by grade level and not in the aggregate. So in this instance, you see, for example, the decline in culture or in the positivity felt around culture and even engagement. Looking cohort to cohort, 70% to 42% in eighth grade. Next slide. So because we aren't unpacking every single question, there are some that I just wanted to highlight. So you have an idea of how those responses are presented or how those questions are presented and how those responses come forward. So this is a question, for example, that a student would receive. My teacher's expectations make me want to do my best. And students are given a ranking of 1 through 5, where 5 is strongly agree and 1 is strongly disagree. So you'll see where our school is, where Mesa is relative to prior years and relative, and of course, by grade level. Okay. Now, what's important for this is that it's an important question. Are there expectations? And of course, every student will interpret it differently. But in this instance, is the intention there to hold high expectations? And are those being conveyed to students? In this instance, some strong affirmation. Next slide. This is also a good mark. And this again is coming from students. I am getting a high quality education at this school. So you see same rating scale and you see the results. In comparison to prior years, we continue to be in a good place in that particular arena. So academically, we see that there's an acknowledgement amongst different groups that we are heading in the right direction. Where obviously the data says that we need to continue to focus on is in our relationship building, our connection, and of course, a feeling of safety. And so that's something that we've been working on very much, even as a part of our focus group. Next slide. What you see here is a smaller sample size because this particular survey is relatively new, 3 through 5. So you see it's only been around for 2 years, and you see there in the yellow what this year's results entail. This one, interestingly enough, go ahead to the next one. You see the breakdown. Not a lot of dramatic changes from one grade to the other. We work very diligently, I know our teachers do, with our 3rd and 4th grade students in particular, 5th grade as well, in just helping them understand. And I think the questions are relatively accessible, but of course, we always have questions about whether students understand it. The other thing, or understand them fully. The other thing with this particular survey is that there's the option of saying sometimes in this particular response. And that's where a lot of students really respond. For example, I was really digging into the culture because of how the ratings came back. And what I was seeing in the report was that there's a large continuum of students who are indicating somewhat or sometimes. Sometimes is the answer. So while there are very few who are expressing any questions around not feeling connected or feeling detached, there are quite a few who are feeling very strong, but many are right in that middle. And the way the survey reads this, you only really credit the affirmative. So that is for sure an area to continue to work on for us, clearly because it's being represented also in grades 6 through 8. So let me go ahead and pause there because I imagine that there might be some questions before I talk about what next steps will be undertaking with this information.
I know last year I had asked something along the lines about the word culture and how it's so vague. I was kind of looking at the slides, and if I understood them correctly, the entity that creates this survey is state of California.
In this instance, it's a nonprofit.
So it's somebody other than Mesa Union.
Correct.
And
It's-
this is a
yes.
survey that all schools use.
No, it's a survey that many schools across the state utilize, and in fact, across the country, but let's just keep it to California. The other version of the other climate survey that's very much in use is the California Healthy Kids Survey. That one is also very much in use across schools in California. However, the questions are very, very similar. They're aligned in very similar ways.
Can we modify any of these questions before sending it to the kids or the parents?
No, the idea is that you can, I'd have to dig into this a little more. You can opt to have a different set of questions asked if that's what you want. But in order to norm it, you would not be able to modify, because then it wouldn't be a comparison, a fair comparison from one district to another, right?
Right.
You're fundamentally changing the survey.
So, I mean, in terms of culture, if you're asking a third grader, is there enough culture here in the school? If you ask my daughter, she's going to say there's, to her culture, it's piñatas, tamales. I mean, does she see this here? And she's probably going to say not at all. So what is culture?
How do we get a copy of the questions?
Yeah, we can unpack some of the question types. Obviously, if you
I want to see
Or
the
parent.
questions themselves.
I mean,
yeah, I can try to
Just
get
year after year?
I did the survey.
Yes.
It doesn't ask you what is school culture.
Right.
It asks you very specific questions that fit in a category of culture.
Right.
And so I mean, I
It's
know
not good.
I read the family version, so I don't know if the student version, how different that is from the family version, but it's not as pointed as this. This is
Sure.
just the category.
This is, they asked 5 questions that would be regarding culture and kind of say, these are the 5 questions, and these are the aggregate results of that, saying that this is how culture is perceived in this environment.
Right. So just to give you specifics, because I was looking at this report just today as well. Here's a question that students would be asked. Do students stay busy in class? That's trying to elicit information about whether students are engaged, right? Rather than saying engaged, do they stay busy? That's how the student would receive it. The other question is, do students behave in class? Right? That's a question that they would see. Do students from your class treat the teacher with respect? It's another question. Under the category of culture, as Mrs. Dryden alluded. And on the 3 through 5 survey, that is the end total of the questions that then lead to that category, right? So those 3 questions make up that culture component. Busyness or behavior, engagement. They're trying to elicit in kid-like language whether students are being productive. I guess that would be my word. Whether there's a respect being awarded to the adults, and whether the behavior matches, right? Whether the behavior is something that kids see as a problem. And that's where kids default to sometimes, which is understandable, right? And they can look around and say, well, Johnny is, or Janie isn't. And so that's where sometimes becomes the biggest part of this. So the reason that I think, I guess to come back to this, holistically, I think that this survey does hold a lot of value. But going back to the point about multiple measures, you want to balance that out with other perspectives, be it from staff. And that's where we engage in these conversations to try to understand better what is meant. And then there's a whole field of open response where people do provide feedback. And then that's where also this student focus group becomes so important, because they help us better understand from their perspective what is meant. First, by looking at the data, we don't hide it from them. We show them the percentages, and they wrestle with it just like we did, or just like you're asking. They will ask each other, well, that's how I understood it, and how did you understand it? And they will ask these questions, and then they will help us understand things, better and differently. So I think that this is something that's important for us to continue to pay close attention to. And it's the start of a broader conversation as we enter into this phase of drafting the LCAP around what our community is telling us as a staff and, of course, as a board.
Yeah, my only thought on that is, the survey is only as good as the questions. And again, asking the kid those kind of questions to say that's our inference that we're going to make on culture with an N of 3, that not maybe the best kind of survey there. And if you look at the family voices, I mean, culture there is pretty high at 87%. So I think the questions there may be a little more understood of what, we as adults might think of culture and what maybe the surveyors think of culture. So, I mean, it's kind of think it's just a limitation of the study there a little bit. The one thing I was going to ask a question about is, one of the things that we've been really working hard on is, our education and learner profile kind of change in how we're asking the teachers and presenting the information. And one of the things I looked at there is, on the staff survey, engagement, relationships, we kind of got some negative numbers there. And I don't know if that's a reflection on some of the questions or in your interpretation that there's some pushback, or is it they're not feeling that that's the right direction, or kind of what your thoughts on that are? Because, if we're doing this whole big change, I would hope that we'd have good buy-in and people would feel very positive about that. So that's kind of one thing that I took away from that.
Yeah, I think it's a fair question, and that's something that Ms. Kuklinski and I, again, fresh off of this information, we have started to look at the individual questions, right, that our staff is providing us with. And we want to ask that very question. We want to be able to have that dialogue with the teachers and bear in mind, it's not just the certificated teachers, it's our staff. Anybody on our staff that isn't a certificated teacher can complete this. But if we're just going to clue in on our teachers, that is something that we want to talk about. And it is something that we'll be discussing. We've got some new initiatives that I think are eliciting some good support, but clearly there is a contingency and at least a contingency that is speaking otherwise. And so the question is it the wrong direction? That's certainly in play. Is it maybe the wrong pace? Is it not being presented in certain ways? So those are all questions that we're looking to build out because that is something that, speaking candidly, it is unfortunate and that we do need to clue into. When we start to take steps back, I would say that a 12% jump one way or the other is statistically significant. We know that to be true. And so that is something that we want to speak to the staff about and recalibrate. Like what is it that we should know or rethink? But it is absolutely a fair question.
Well, one of my questions along with this is, are they asked the same questions year after year? If they're consistent that way, that's an important thing to me. The second thing is that needs to be included with this evaluation is what specifically with regards to staff, what staff has changed that could have an impact. Like we hired 2 teachers or so now just their perceptions could be different than what the group said the previous year. And that can have an impact with, 23, 24 teachers, a change of 1 or 2 could have a radical difference with how they might answer a question. And I'm not making excuses about this, but I will talk to you about the fact that we are, as I look at this, let me put it in my perspective. What are we doing about it? And I don't want to take a whole year to unpack things before we make adjustments. Let me give you a case in point. I don't know that were any of you here involved with the parking lot and the light out front? I don't think any of you were. So I can safely say this, it was before your time. A previous board, we took on the endeavor to expand the parking lot, to improve school safety, and to make that work. And we did that. It worked great. And we put in the turn pocket to turn right into the parking lot, the left turn pocket to turn left into the parking lot. That was the worst thing in the world that we ever did. It created such a hazard to everyone that came in and out of the school, because what those turn pockets did is that it gave somebody to turn right or turn left to get out of the way for the through traffic, and through traffic kept going 55, 65 miles an hour. They didn't slow at all. So if somebody trying to get out of the parking lot, it was next to impossible to do it safely, or even to get in to the parking lot. It was next to impossible. It wasn't until we installed the traffic light that it resolved that issue and brought safety back. And so had we decided to say, well, let's look at this for a year before we make a decision, that means that we're putting at risk everybody going in and out of the school for a year before we come to a decision. Another one we talked about, this one just really unnerved me, is that we talked about student safety. What do we do? And so we'd done the CHAMPS program before. Some superintendent came back in here and says, hey, we're going to do CHAMPS. And he evaluated it for a year and a half. And then he says, we're going to go for it. And then we implemented it for a year before it actually took place. And it took us 3 years to implement a program. Then it kind of went by the wayside for a year or two. A new superintendent comes in and says, we're going to do CHAMPS. We just got through doing that. And it took another year to evaluate, another year to implement. And that drives me nuts. We're a small enough school to say, we've got data. We know what's a dog and what's not a dog. And if it's bad, let's get rid of it. And if it's good, let's move forward with it. And we don't need to take years upon years. Sometimes, program, we expect to see these milestones, but we should know fairly quickly whether or not a program that we're implementing is good or not. And students pay the price. And I've got a very real example about that. We had a teacher here that was awful. Absolutely awful. My child had that teacher for 2 periods, 40% of their time. Absolutely awful. It took me a year as a parent and a board member to say to the superintendent and to the principal to say, we've got a problem here. And they refused to address it because it would be too hard for their schedule. And who paid the price? Every student in those classes. And that's wrong. It's absolutely wrong. My child's education suffered irreparably because of a lack of a decision and a lack to move forward and a lack to do the right thing. We got to take time to evaluate this. Oh, it's inconvenient to hire a different person at this point in time, or to make an adjustment, or to do training, or whatever it might be. And that's wrong. It's absolutely wrong. And so we're small enough to be able to say, we look at things, we can make decisions, especially as a board, and we need to adapt. Sometimes it does take time, but to decide that we're going to do CHAMPS and evaluate it for a year and take another year to implement it, we don't need to be doing that. We can decide CHAMPS is a program, we're going with it, and if it proves out that it's not working, we toss it aside and we go with something else. Because who pays the price? The students pay the price, not the adults, the students. And that's where I want to focus to be, is on the students and how do we make it successful for them. We don't have to pilot things for a year and year and year and year before we come to a conclusion that it's not working. Okay, that's my soapbox. I'm sorry.
So I'll just share one piece in response to that, because obviously, the discussion about any staff member wouldn't be appropriate to have here. But What I can tell you in terms of your point about being effective, not letting time go by, we have over the last 2 years, we've talked things more in terms of phased implementation and having certain groups jump out to the lead and others follow, but always with the plan to continue to grow. I would put Avid in that category. I would put our implementation of our second step curriculum in that category. If I can, I think to the point about professional learning, I think what our teachers are asking for, because it's come up in conversations, is professional learning that's more personalized to the place in their career, to their particular content area, or their particular needs. So those are things that we're trying to be very mindful about, no doubt, but clearly we're not meeting our mark. Clearly we're not hitting the mark. And so we need to continue to figure out how to get there, right? We have across the board, we have mid-career professionals in that 12 to 20, pushing on 20 years. And what that means for the professional is something very different than it might in years 0 to 5, right? So I think that's the kind of open and honest dialogue that we need to have. And this is clearly information, but we want to make sure that we're having these discussions. So just on Thursday, coming up, we have our school leadership team, representation of teachers across grade levels. We've been using that as a venue to be able to engage in that kind of dialogue so that we can receive feedback. And this is one of the topics that we'll be discussing, if not this Thursday, and one very soon thereafter. But I would only say, I don't believe that we're deliberating for longer than we need to. I would agree with you that we are small and can be nimble. What I have found here, though, is that because it's the same people taking on all the work, we have to be careful that we don't oversaturate people. And we all also may be at that point where maybe the initiatives are too many and we're not focused, or we're feeling overwhelmed. So that's come up also among staff. So it's just a delicate balance, and we're gonna have to continue to figure that out with them. Right? But no, I wouldn't consider us doing anything that's at all negligent or purposely harmful. And I'll just make one last point about safety. Safety is top of mind for every single parent in every single school, period, private, alternative. It just is. We live in an extremely different society. I'll only speak on a personal note. I have done my best to buffer us from what we know to be true in our community, whether it's substance use, acts of violence happening in our community and specifically coming onto our campus. And there is a really difficult line to toe between privacy and the public's right to know. And it came up for us. Speaking candidly, we had a rumor that emerged around a school shooting here at Mesa that I know has continued to have a lingering impact amongst parents and families, and it is unnerving. And those are things that are not unique to us, but it's how we deal with them here that I think impacts what parents are saying about school safety, right? As one example, concrete example. So there's a lot there to unpack. There's a lot that we've done about it. There's a lot that we will continue to do about it, but it's not an easy thing. So this is one data point. We'll continue to unpack it. Part of how we'll unpack it and I know there's many other comments and questions, but just to bring this is through these groups who will continue to help us inform, make decisions, set the right priorities, and make decisions around where we invest our time, effort, and resources to conclude this year, but also as we springboard into a new plan. All right. So if we want to have any closing thoughts.
I do. I just want to make sure that when we're unpacking this, and I'm sure you will, when we're talking about especially the decline in staff percentages on various items, there's also only 60% of staff participating. So I think it's really important to unpack who are the 40 that did not participate and to make sure that we are getting all voices of the staff involved in that, because that will dramatically change what professional learning looks like. That will dramatically change what engagement with staff and students looks like, depending on what that staff member's role is.
Yeah, and because it's anonymous, we don't know, right? But you're absolutely right. I think we have to rethink that because we get pretty much 100%, close to 100% participation from students. I think there's a way to get us closer to that mark among staff, because then we would be able to get an even better read and determine whether what we're seeing. But for now, we have to accept it as being truthful, honest, clear, and we'll act accordingly based on the information here to make decisions.
Do we give all of our staff time while they're on campus during the workday to complete the survey?
We do, but maybe we need to rethink that. And I think maybe we need to make it more of an extended time. We'll have to ask them about that.
Just one other point
What's
on
the
that.
hurdle?
Yeah,
Why do
one other point on that. You say all staff are kind of clumped together there, just like you have, 6th, 7th, 8th, and 3 and below. Can we maybe in the future separate that out from, the teachers from the support staff? And because I know you say they're all kind of lumped together there because they probably have very differing, degrees of issues that they'd like to focus on. So that might also be beneficial.
Yeah, I'll try to see if we can make that accommodation where they declare their role, maybe not by grade level, because we have such a small sample. I mean, such a small staff. Yeah, something like that, something that makes sense for us. That's a good suggestion. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and conclude our report, future reports to come. But thank you for your input and your ongoing assistance.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ramirez. Moving forward, public hearing. I'd like to open the public hearing for AB 1200, disclosure of collective bargaining agreement with the Mesa Union Student Team Must, and public comment regarding their proposed collective bargaining agreements with the agreement with Mesa Union Support Team for the period of July 1, 2023 through July 30th, 2026. Presentation included by the public disclosure of the major provisions of the proposed agreement, including costs to be incurred by the district, followed by the opportunity for the public to comment, according to Government Code Section 3547.5. I now declare public hearing open. Look here, is there anybody in the participants raising their hands? I don't see any. All right. I'm now going to close the public hearing for AB 1200 as I previously outlined, and move forward to the public hearing for the tentative collective bargaining agreement with the Mesa Union Support Team. That's item 12B, and declare that public hearing open. And again, I'll look to the see anybody. All right, we'll now declare that public hearing closed. Yeah, I should have run times then. You're recording this time? Okay. It was 8:11 and 8:12. Anyway, moving on to item 13A. Consideration of approval of the disclosure of the collective bargaining agreement between the Mesa Union Support Team Must, in accordance with AB 1200 and AB 27546 for the period of July 1, 2023 through July 30th, 2026. public disclosure of the major provisions and proposed agreement, including the costs to be incurred by the district according to Government Code Section 3547.5. Do I have a motion?
So move.
And a second.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the disclosed collective bargaining agreement with Must in accordance with AB 1200, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? The motion carries 5-0 in favor. Item B, consideration of approval of the tentative bargaining agreement with the Mesa Union School District and the Mesa Union, and this being edited to support team for the period of July 1, 2023 through June 30th, 2026 or 2025.
2025.
Okay, do I have a motion for that? Give it a try, Jamie. You can look at the dates.
Your second.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the tentative bargaining agreement between Mesa Union School District and Must, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries 5-0 in favor. Consideration and approval of the art, music, instructional materials discretionary block grant expenditure plan. Do I have a motion?
Also move to consider the approval of the art, music, instructional materials discretionary block grant expenditure plan.
Second.
Second it.
Any discussion?
Yes, I wanted to go ahead and the board has received some background information on this in writing from me previously. I went ahead and provided it now as part of your agenda summary. But in effect, this particular block grant, you'll see in the document itself the allowable expenses, and the proposal from our staff is that we earmark this funding for operational cost, including, and in this instance, more likely focused on furniture and fixtures. The block grant, there's a lot of questions about art, music, and instructional materials piece, which is completely appropriate and valid. So I'll start there. The landscape has shifted for the better in that regard. We have received funds from Prop 28, which is a renewable and ongoing source of funding. We have also earmarked those activities, art, music specifically, as part of our supplemental program, LCAP supplemental funding. And so we feel good about where we are funding-wise with those initiatives, support for staffing, materials, ongoing activities. This particular block grant is one time. It will not be ongoing. It is a good amount of money, and it will allow us to be able to make a real step forward in the purchase of new furniture, something that we are in very sore need of addressing. In my experience in school districts, oftentimes bonds or bond funds are used for the purchase of furniture and fixtures. That is not allowable in Measure O. We did confirm that recently, or I did confirm that recently. And I think this would allow us to be able to earmark some money that would otherwise have to come most likely from general fund and would take us a much longer horizon to be able to address. To my knowledge, it's been well over 10 years that Mesa has purchased furniture. We've had some things on the margins, which is good, but in terms of classroom furniture, it's been well over 10 years from everything that I've gathered since we really moved forward. And I think that's a very important need for us and one that has been expressed many ways from the staff. So I would like to be able to earmark this funding for that purpose primarily. We can always revisit if things change in the near future. But that would allow us to, in full, start a process and a broader discussion with our staff around what those furniture needs might entail. So I will gladly receive questions to that effect and clarify. It would be for all grades. I'm still working through what a process might look like near term and more fully into next year, but it would be for all grades. This allowance not satisfy most likely all grades currently, but like I said, it would allow us to make a huge step forward. In your board packet, you would see that I have figures ranging anywhere between 12 and upwards of 15,000 just for core furniture. We're talking tables, chairs, not to speak of cabinetry, any additional furniture, just the core. So multiplied out by 10 classrooms alone, we can do some simple math here and see that my projections is that we need somewhere in the neighborhood of between 400 and 500,000 to outfit all of our classrooms. So you can see where this would make a significant contribution toward that. But yes, it would be for all classrooms, phased in over multiple years.
Any other question? I have one. I just want to make sure that, furniture is well within the boundaries of the grant and what it's saying that it could be allocated for. And so that we're clear about that there's no problem with that as far as the grant is concerned.
Yes, operational costs, of which furniture would be a part of that, is allowable, yes.
And are we satisfied with the 70,000 and what we're using to fund our art and other music programs? Is that enough for what we need, or is this something?
Dr. Campbell, that's a loaded question. Am I satisfied? The answer is no. That's only because we always would benefit from additional funding. But coupled with other funding sources, we have been able to maintain our music program, right, alive and well. We always have to revisit our art component, but we also have some other means by which we can address that. So yes, we've been able to stabilize it and it's ongoing. But no, I would always like more funding. It's just not readily there. But no, I think right now we're in a good place when it comes to being able to sustain our programs as they currently exist.
It's satisfactorily funded.
Yes, not appropriately.
Not satisfied, but satisfactory, but there's no large ticket items for that really would benefit. I mean, I just want to make sure that, we're not robbing from Peter to pay Paul, but we want to make sure that that's adequately taken care of too, because that's as big a component as any part of our education.
Right now we're going to be developing our budget for this coming year. And part of that will be, we always think about it in multiple years and phased in instrumentation, equipment, things of that nature. We always like to think of those in phases. But it is at this point, we are in a good place when it comes to all that. And we've been able to really make do. So I believe that, again, if we encountered a challenge, this is not going to be imminent. It's going to be phased. So if there had to be an adjustment, we would bring a plan back and have that discussion with the board.
School charity something. These are old tables and chairs. Sometimes it's outdated and we don't have enough number of kids in our classroom, but not that you're broken or So my only request is that it's off them, they're not supposed to book, so
I can,
Need to follow board policy as relates to disposition materials, so we would.
and I can just tell you, we will do our best, but I think our furniture, bear in mind, many districts and schools have moved in this process. And so many of us would be discarding furniture all at once, right? So our ability to find useful homes and all of that for it, or useful venues for it, may be more limited than we think. I understand the sensitivity. I share in it around waste. But it's also a time crunch, right? In finding somebody or an agency or an entity that would take it on. So we will do our best, but to minimize waste.
there are follow, and so I think we could go auction for a very small amount of
Any further comments or questions? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving the art, music, construction materials discretionary block grant expenditure plan, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. That motion carries 5-0 in favor. Item D, consideration of approval of the revised principal salary schedule effective July 1, 2023. Can I have a motion?
So move.
I'll second the motion.
Any discussion?
It'll be a nice birthday present. Today's her birthday.
It is Ms. Kuklinski's birthday. So happy birthday, Ms. Kuklinski. Outright, with no other reason. There's no other anything, just happy birthday.
Happy birthday. Any other further comments or questions? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving the revised principal salary schedule, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. That motion carries 5-0 in favor. Consideration of approval of the revised classified confidential monthly salary schedule effective July 1, 2023. Can I have a motion?
I so move.
Second.
I'll second the motion.
Any comments or questions about this? Is it confidential?
Yeah, it's not like.
Pardon me? Any other questions, comments? All those in favor of approving the revised classified confidential monthly salary schedule, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. That motion carries 5-0 in favor. Consideration of adoption of the 2024-2025 Mesa Union School District classified holiday calendar.
I so move.
I'll second.
Any comments or questions?
That's a very loaded question once again. So we do not,
We typically observe it.
yes.
Historically, it works, but according to the code, the board can actually move that to be tied with a weekend. There's specific language.
And we just don't have the capacity to be able to release our classified because it would interfere with our instructional schedule or instructional calendar. There, we have some flexibility on where to place it, but I think given where most of our 12-month and this we would affect 11 and 12-month employees, that appeared to be the best place to put it. It's typically when they're taking their time off anyway. Our staff is really great about that. So that way it would not be a vacation day, it would be an observed holiday. So in effect, it's just swapping it out for another day.
Number of days is the same.
The number of days is, yes.
And the fact that it made this far, the assumption is that it obviously met the approval of the classified staff.
We've effectively just rolled it. So that's just all it is really rolling the calendar forward.
Any other comments or questions? All those in favor of approving, or excuse me, of adopting the 2024-2025 Mesa Union School District classified holiday calendar, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay. That motion carries 5-0 in favor. Consideration and approval of the declaration of need for a fully qualified educator for the 2024-2025 school year. Can I get a motion? Second. Okay. Any comments or questions?
Just a point of clarification that this is something that is brought forward on a annual basis. The position speaks to one. But obviously our staffing needs will be made more visible to us in the coming weeks and months.
Should the word educator be plural or singular? Because in the description down below, it's plural, and in the motion, it's singular.
Sure, if we want to make it plural, that's fine. Mhm. I don't think it's a material difference, to be honest with you.
You know, it's not speaking collectively. We don't have anybody that's out of qualification right at this point. Okay.
No.
Any other questions or comments? All those in favor of approving the declaration of need for a fully qualified educator for the 2024-2025 school year, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. That motion carries 5-0 in favor. Consideration of approval of the annual statement of need for 30-day substitute teaching permits for the 2024-2025 school year.
Second.
Any questions or comments about the annual statement of need for 30-day substitute teaching permits?
Just another annual process that we undertake, but just the board should know that this is a rolling need, and so we hire as we can, and we've been very fortunate to have a good pool of subs, especially given the context that I hear from my colleagues across the county that are experiencing some severe sort of shortages. And so we have a very loyal and committed small group of subs that help us on a daily basis.
So without this, we couldn't hire 30-day subs?
I don't know that to be true. I just know this to be an annual thing that I've shied away from pulling.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but it's something that we undertake on a regular basis.
Any other comments or questions? All those in favor of approving the annual statement of need for 30-day substitute teaching permits for the school year 2024-2025, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. That motion carries 5-0 in favor. Consideration of acceptance of the quarterly report of the Williams Uniform Complaints. Any questions or comments? There were no complaints. Who gets to fill out the report? Thank you so much. There's so much of this behind the scenes work that doesn't get recognized, and so thank you. It takes, even though there's no complaints, there's still a lot of big form to fill out. All those in favor of accepting the quarterly report on the Williams Uniform Complaints, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries 5-0 in favor. Consideration of approval of resolution 23-24-11, authorizing emergency contracting for the completion of a well improvements at the Mesa Union School District pursuant to the Uniform Public Construction Cost Accounting Act. Cost Accounting Act, excuse me.
So
Who'd you catch on that one, Canby or Papa? We'll get to Miss Up. And Dr. Canby, will you skip second? Rochambeau. Yeah. Any comments or questions? This is coming to be routine for us. I mean, until a bid is accepted.
Yes, and I'm optimistic that this will be the last month and that we'll be able to move in a different direction come our next the next regular board meeting.
All those in favor of approving resolution 23-24-11, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. That motion carries 5-0 in favor. Consideration of approval of the following field trip requests. We'll just take them. Can we group them together? Let's group them together. For the 7th grade field trip to UCSB, research experience and the education facilities, REEF. TKK field trip to the Santa Barbara Zoo. The 8th grade field trip to JPL. And the 8th grade celebration trip to Six Flags Magic Mountain. Do I have a motion?
I'll second the motion.
Discussion.
I just want to highlight just the breadth of activities and opportunities that our kids get to experience beyond school, and that ultimately comes back here for learning and home for discussion and follow-up and excitement. Particularly the JPL, which has been many years in the making, and as I've been educated, it was a regular occurrence in past Mesa history, but it's something that was a little bit of that elusive whale that Mrs. Spillane has been trying to track down. No offense, Mrs. Dryden, because I know you're an environmentalist, as am I, but it's figurative. But she finally landed that one. I just couldn't be happier, and we had to make it happen. I think it's going to be a memorable experience for our kids, and one that I hope will serve them well. I'm hoping we can make that a staple of what we do, but JPL has become a challenging place to
Get into
to penetrate. Every scientist tells me that, and so now I have to believe it.
Bill.
And so several times where, I mean, this line in the classroom was doing it, I was doing it at work, like, because we were trying to get in at that 0.6 second, just so that it became alive. It was very exciting stuff.
Yeah,
Yes, I'm convinced there are bots at play.
Yeah. Well, it's a fabulous experience. And for those that don't know, JPL is for unmanned space flights. And there's such a plethora of information that can be gleaned and gathered. And it's so exciting, and I'm grateful that we're doing that. Hats off to all those involved in making this possible. I'm going to ask the obligatory question, which is, how is this being funded? All these trips?
They're co-funded. Most of these, wherever there is an admission, in effect, PFO provides us an allowance for field trips, and from there, we're able to recoup quite a bit of the funding used toward it. But there's always staff time, travel, and that the district has customarily paid for.
Any other comments or questions? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving the field trips as outlined, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries 5-0 in favor. Next on the agenda is item L, which is the first read of the March 2024 board policy and revisions. And so be prepared next month for those. Yeah, they're outlined here on the next page in the agenda, in the packet. So there's quite a number of them here that we need to be paying attention to. Item 14A, personnel, consideration of acceptance of the resignation of Stacy Shin, the speech therapist, effective June 30th, 2024.
Second the motion.
It's been moved and seconded. She's been here for at least 7 years.
We'd have to confirm, but 7 to 8 years minimum.
It'll be a loss. It's an important part to the life of Mesa Union. Anyway, all those in favor of accepting the resignation of Stacy Shin, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. That motion carries 5-0 in favor. Item B, consideration of acceptance of the retirement of Matthew D. Maria, seventh grade teacher effective June 30th, 2024.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
I'm tempted to vote no on this one, but out of love for Matt, I will vote yes, because I know that that's what's in his heart to do right now. But he's been a tremendous asset to this school. I've known him since the very first day that I walked through the doors, and he's just been a tremendous asset to the school. And so I wish him joy and happiness in his retirement.
I will have an opportunity to, bid him a good farewell, and likewise, I'd like to echo that sentiment. In my time here has been phenomenal, and I only know of his contributions to the lives of many, many, many students, families, all of which he seems to remain very connected with, which is amazing to me. So Mr. Mesa is retiring, and it's yes, like you, Mr. Sullivan, I feel very conflicted about that, but
Yeah, well,
we do wish him the best.
I'm going to share this again when we recognize him, but I went to the fifth grade introduction to junior high program, and he was there, and he greeted students that were the children of his students in his class. And it was just phenomenal. He knew every single person that was there. Anyway, we're going to miss Matt. Anyway, all those in favor of accepting the retirement letter of Mr. Matthew D. Maria, say aye.
Yep, I'm done.
So mine's about to die too.
Mine died.
Anyway, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. That motion carries 5-0 in favor. Items for future consideration is the LCAP update, special board workshop consideration, and future meetings is May 21st, 6 p.m., June 10th at 6 p.m., and that's a Monday night, and Thursday, June 13th at 5 p.m. So on the May 10th and May 13th, notice the difference times and dates.
And if you could please make note of that special board workshop, just so that we ensure that we are able to meet quorum on that day.
Okay. Yeah, those are important. With that, we'll adjourn this meeting at 8:41.